On this video, we're going to talk about feeling invisible, both growing up in your family and in your adult relationships today. Stay tuned. Welcome to the New Love Addiction. I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist, and let's explore the feeling of invisibility. To be in relationship and to not feel seen. Oftentimes the phrases, I do not feel seen, known, heard, or understood, and very specifically the feeling of not being seen is the feeling of being invisible. How this gets set up in our life, if we think of our family, and perhaps you can relate, perhaps this resonates with you, that you too have this history of not being seen in your family. And besides the obvious, besides outright being ignored, outright being dismissed, I want to focus on a bit more of the difficult ways to assess or the difficult ways to observe that this is in fact happening. It's a kind of covert, a kind of hidden way in which family members are interacting, but in fact, they're not interacting. And what this means for the child, for a child growing up in a family, and this ultimately translates into adult relationships as well. But for a child growing up in a family, we need the other family members, and of course very specifically the parents, the primary caregivers, the adults in the relationship, people we admire, people we look up to, people who are guiding us in our development, in our maturity. We need other people to take an investment in our inner world. So if you can think about the external world, the world of things, the world of activities, the world of time, chronology, things happen, the hours pass, the seasons come and go, and imagine throughout the day, if we're thinking of a child, that child goes to school, that child has certain classes during the day, that child has some extracurricular activities, and then the child goes home and has dinner. And this is also going on for the parents. They have a life, they have activities, they have a job, and events occur in this external world. Now, many people only talk about the external world. The most sometimes judgmental question, or how people have a strong judgment about the question, how is the weather? This is a very common example to say, how is the weather? We're saying, well, what do you notice that's going on externally outside with the weather? How is it impacting you? What is happening today? And many people talk about their experience of what happened. They tell a story in chronology or in chronological time. They repeat what happened. So, an example, imagine a young child getting off of the school bus, and the question is, well, how was school? What did you do today at school? And then what follows are, well, we made an art project, and we did math class, and we went to recess, and we had lunch, and they had carrots, and I do not like carrots. And then we had more classes, and then we had gym, and then we had recess, and then we went home, etc., etc. And also the parents could share information about their day, what they did, who they ran into, perhaps what they had for lunch. I'm trying to make this focus or make the distinction from our external world, our world of activities, our world of concrete happenings, our world of time passing, and in that process of time passing, we are engaged in activities. And many times, conversation is limited and about these activities. And that when people engage and they share information about what's going on in their life, they ultimately are retelling the stories of what just happened. And this is very easy. You could imagine easy to track, easy to understand. I'm sure you have a friend who, when you're going to get together with the friend shows up and the friend says, well, you wouldn't believe what just happened. I was driving here and I got stuck in traffic, and then this other car started beeping the horn, and they're beeping the horn, and I pulled over to the right-hand lane to let the person pass, but then they didn't pass. They just got right behind me and they started beeping the horn. Oh, I was so angry at this car, and I kept waving them, move around, etc., etc., etc. And there's this story. The person who's telling the story is recounting the experience of the events, of things that happened. Now, what I want to point out is there's actually another world. There's the hidden world. It's the world of going inward. It is the world of where we make meaning. It is the world of our emotional experience. It is the world of where we create some reflection. And it's how within that reflection, the reflecting on what had happened, reflecting on our own experience, that we get reflected back to us who we are. So we have these kind of two worlds, the material external world of happenings, and then this inner world of experience, of how do I feel about what is actually happening? What do I notice within myself, my own process of what is happening? So you could imagine that it is highly important and satisfying and meaningful and a rather rich feeling of dropping into a full body experience when you are asked, what is going on in your inner world? What is your experience? What do you notice? What do you like about what just happened? How does that make you feel? And when we receive questions where another person is going beyond the surface, going beyond the material, going beyond the external world of events and chronology and happenings, but instead asking questions about, well, what is going on for you internally during this experience? Or what did you learn about yourself when you were in that situation? Or what do you notice right now as you tell the story? What's happening to you? Such as, I feel excitement, or I'm fearful, or I'm confused about what happened. And then to have a friend, to have a family member, another person say, well, tell me about that fear. Tell me about that confusion. Tell me about that insight. You just revealed, you just shared that you had an insight about yourself in that situation. Now that is interesting. Please tell me more about that insight. We're not saying, please tell me more about the events and the chronology and the specifics and the happenings of what is going on externally. We're trying to drop down into this other inner world, this world of meaning, this world of aspirations, this world of dreams. Now, the challenge, or how this can be so hurtful and feel like you're not seen, to feel that you're invisible, is that if you grow up in a family, specifically with parents and of course other family members, who are not making the effort or the inquiry to find out what exactly is going on in your inner world experience, where you are exploring the places that reflect back to you who you are. If you have a parent who only is focusing on the external events, it will feel rather two-dimensional and stale and will lack a kind of dynamic engagement. It will lack a kind of emotional activation. And then it goes into feeling like reporting. It feels like rote. It feels like going through a grocery list of details. This happened, I did this, I went to the dry cleaner, I paid this bill, I talked to my boss about this happened. Okay, time to go to bed. There is a two-dimensional flat aspect of that kind of relating. Now, whether the child is aware of this or not, and as the child's developing, especially during the years of 10, 11, 12, when the child's dropping more into greater awareness of one's identity self and developing more consciousness of who one is, that to not have a parent inquire and ask about your inner world experience, it sends the message to the child that you're not worth knowing. Now, respectfully, understandably, for parents who don't do this, oftentimes they have not had it done for themselves as well. They do not know what it's like to fully be engaged and want to know, well, what is your inner world experience? How are you making meaning out of what is happening? What do you notice? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And to create comparisons. You liked this one thing last week. I just noticed that you mentioned something new. How does that compare to what you said last week? If we create those comparisons, it creates a kind of continuity, and it reaffirms for the person, says, I'm actually listening. I'm actually listening to what you said a week ago, and I'm tracking who you are, what you like, your dreams and aspirations, and what's going on for you internally. And then I can make reference to it weeks later, not only to let you know that I was listening, but also because I'm curious to know, where is the continuity? I am curious to track the comparisons of what you reveal about yourself. What is at the core of this process and this exchange is curiosity, to actually want to know what another person's experience is. And as I've already said, for some people growing up in families where that does not happen, we get the sense, whether we're conscious of it or not, I must not be worth knowing if the family member, if the parent that I'm with is not making an effort to want to know me. Now, two things can happen, and it's a kind of simple explanation, a simple response. And that is, one, a person can, because they're not having their inner world experience activated, engaged, there's not a lot of questioning to want to know about this child's inner world. Well, some of those people grow up kind of, we should say, not having that skill to do that within themselves. They do not know how to go inward and inquire about what they liked about a certain situation, or reflect upon, well, how does this make me feel? And or to derive meaning, or to put it in some framework of a dream or aspiration, or turn it into an opportunity. If I notice what's going on in my inner landscape, my inner emotional landscape, what does that say about who I am, and how do I value that? Some people do not value that or even know how, because if the parent and other family members did not mirror this kind of deeper self-inquiry, then they're not going to be able to do it for themselves and think in terms of flexing a muscle or exercising and you strengthen your muscles. Some people just have not used this muscle. Now, also what happens sometimes is the exact opposite, is that for some people who were ignored and who were not seen in their family and who felt invisible, and they noticed that the family was not creating inquiry and not making an effort to ask them who they are as a person, what happens, and I don't quite know why or how this would happen, but the child, as he or she's developing, develops a rather rich inner world, a rather rich fantasy world, a kind of overcompensating for what the family members are not doing. And the child somehow, through their own use of their mind, can enter this very rich, engaging world of self-reflection and emotion and dreams and aspirations, and kind of create an internalized substitute or an internalized inquisitor, where they are now providing that function for themselves, even though the other family members are not doing it. One theory or one hypothesis, I think, why this happens is that children are driven by deep sadness and grief, and we cannot let in the grief that my parent does not really want to know me who I am. My parent is sending me the message that my inner world experience is not really worth inquiring about. There's a profound, heavy, sad loss and grief in that place. And the child cannot let in that reality because it's too crushing. So I think perhaps if I had to explore a kind of hypothesis around why some people and some children actually develop this skill despite not having it mirrored, is that we are driven and compelled subconsciously to make peace with our own grief. And that the only way to do that, to feel this intense nagging of this grief that needs attention, we're not quite able consciously to let that in, because we cannot accept the fact that, hey, guess what? At age 12, it's very devastating if the child comes into consciousness with the realization, hey, my mom is ignoring me, or my dad wants nothing to do with me, or my brother, my sister are not paying attention to me. We cannot let in that profound grief, so we manage it by going inward. And oftentimes this is the place where great creativity comes from, a very rich inner world, a very rich life of imagination and fantasy, because we are overcompensating, we are cultivating the experience of knowing who we are in this realm, in this other place beyond the external and the material. However, as we're doing this, we're reinforcing that we're isolated. We're developing this incredibly fine-tuned ability to have a fantasy life, but we're still going without engagement and other people being curious to want to know us. So it's simultaneously reinforcing, I must not be worth knowing. Now, many people even if they do have this experience internally for themselves of beginning to inquire, what is your inner world? What is going on for you? Even though that's happening, there's a simultaneous feeling of emptiness and loss and a kind of great void, because we're still not getting connection with our loved ones. And this can make you feel invisible. So again, if there are families who it's very obvious that they are ignoring their children, this is going to happen and be very hurtful. But many people, when you look at home videos, when you look at photographs, when they tell stories, and very specifically like proximity and that the family members are present, we're all together, and they are lovely people, and I'm a lovely person, and there's a general supportiveness and a positiveness. For lack of a better phrase, we can say we're growing up in a good home, there's good parenting. And nonetheless, at the same time, there's this profound aching, this emptiness, this void, this longing, this complete disconnect that is kind of echoing throughout your growing up, throughout your development, and that carries over into your adult life. This echoing of a profound absence where there's a resignation, a resigning into being isolated. And so we have interaction with family members, for whatever the conclusion is to say, well, it's good enough parenting, good enough family members, everyone's friendly, everyone's nice, or even if they weren't always friendly and nice, they're still, in general, we managed to survive. And if there was not an engagement of your inner world, you can take with you this kind of profound isolation, this emptiness, this kind of unfulfilled longing. And what that's about is a longing to be known. Could you please know me? I don't want to be invisible. Please ask me some questions about my experience. Please reflect back to me what you notice I'm thinking and what you notice my likes and my dislikes are. Please reveal your curiosity about who I am. And of course, this is reciprocal. Of course, there must be reciprocity. So then I will do the same to you. Also, I want to know about your inner world. I want to know about what you were thinking in that moment, or when you shared some story from your past. I want to know, well, how do you think that impacted you at the time? Now looking back, how do you think that experience impacted you? And what we are saying each time we offer these questions, what we are offering every time we notice something going on, is we're offering, I want you to be present with me. I don't want you to be invisible. I want you to have presence. I want you to be in the spotlight. I want you to feel three-dimensional and engaged. I want to engage with you. Now, here's the challenge, or I'll say here's the rub. Many of us do not know how to reconcile this, and we have lived so much of our lives feeling invisible, feeling that emptiness, feeling that deep longing, just working with a kind of chronic void, that we seem to think that is the normal, that is our baseline, and we can't imagine possibly it being any different. And the challenge then in that is we pick partners, we either subconsciously find partners who are equally non-engaging, or we might find ourselves settling, not believing that anything else is possible. And when we do this, we're betraying ourselves. There's a kind of resignation to say, not only did my parent not want to know me, not only are my adult relationships with people who do not want to know me, but I'm going to stay in these kind of situations and in these kind of relationships because, in fact, I am resigning myself to not being known. And then also some people shut down internally where they stop having a rich inner life. They stop having a life of fantasy. They stop questioning and reflecting around their own experience. And they too shut down. And they are engaging, or I should say non-engaging themselves in the same way that they were trained growing up. There's a kind of profound absence, and it's in this absence that there's a echo, an emptiness that just holds space and echoes, and it feels like nothing's there. Many people report that this place, I call it the wasteland, sitting in the wasteland, walking in the wasteland, wandering in the wasteland. This is the place of addiction. This is the place that is unbearable. This is the place of contemplating suicide. This is the place of profound depression. This is the place of, I don't matter because other people do not want to join with me. I want to add one layer of confusion to all of this, because what I just shared in that last part is the emotional intensity and the very painful ache that comes with living in the wasteland. And if we link it to our history, as I have here, I've mapped it out that it's linked to your history. That's just wildly painful, and it also feels wildly personal. I've been talking about this in the context of a personal experience. Now, here is the layer. Here is also one other piece that's going to make this all a bit more confusing. All of these feelings I'm referring to are also what we could call existential loneliness. And the word existential is about existence. It's about, as a human being, what is your existence? And oftentimes when we talk about existential challenge, existential problem, an existential dilemma, it's usually or very much has to do with a conflict that brings about pain and discomfort and disappointment and something that's very challenging. So to talk about existentialism is to talk about existence pain. As a human being, there is just fundamentally a certain amount of pain and a certain amount of unresolvable life challenges will come your way just by right of existing, just by right of being a human being, and by breathing and living inhabited in your body, being on this planet. There are some universal disappointments that everyone is going to encounter. One of those has to do with you're alone. One of those has to do with there is a internalized feeling, or there is a place internally where when you tap into your existential loneliness, you feel this very vast opening into the absence of what it means to be a human being. And we can see this, in films and in literature and in poetry. If you go to dinner, if you go out to a restaurant and you look across the room and you see couples who are together and they're smiling and they're laughing and they're interacting, and at the same time you can notice there's a kind of sadness to how they're interacting. You can almost imagine their disappointments in their relationship. How, as good as it is, sometimes and oftentimes, it also brings with it a certain amount of loneliness and isolation and not having your needs met. So from an existential standpoint, from looking at existence pain, the challenge is to be able to endure that, to be able to accept. It is an act of maturity to say, wow, this moment feels so isolating, and from a mature point of view, I'm not going to lose my mind about it. And what I want to add here is I'll say it's impersonal. In a way, existential loneliness, existential aloneness has a rather universal, neutral quality. It might not always be pleasant, but it's not personally torturous. And that's the learning piece. That's what I'm trying to offer up here, is that when we heal, when we are working on our family relationships, when we are changing our family patterns, when we are looking at how we pick partners, and we realize that we pick partners who do not engage us and are not curious about our own experience, or we realize we need to develop the skill within ourselves, when we bump into, when we connect with this painful place of emptiness, longing, absence, and the void, the great void, the wasteland of non-connection, here's the healing piece, here's what I was pointing out, is you need to be able to discern and notice the feelings change when you're coming at this from a very personal place of your own history. That's a kind of hot, active grief of what didn't happen, and you're realizing there is a kind of ongoing regret that it was not able to be any different. The reason why I'm pointing out to make the distinction is that as you heal the personal struggle of working or living with this awareness of this emptiness, there is still going to be emptiness. The emptiness will not go away. The emptiness does not change. The loneliness does not change. The absence, the wasteland as a realm, as a place, as this kind of inner world experience of this wasteland, that is not actually going to change, but what changes is your relationship to it. It's no longer you're not going to have hooks and barbs into it based upon your unresolved personal trauma or your unresolved hurts from past family relationships. You're going to mature in your ability to contain and hold and be able to exchange and be okay with that level of emptiness. I want to point out that it is this universal emptiness and our incredible desire to ignore it, push away from it, avoid it, and ultimately find a distraction to fill up this emptiness because we perceive it to be such a horrible, horrendous place to be. Most people seek out mindlessness activities. Most people seek out distraction and entertainment, and they're constantly trying to distract themselves from even feeling or observing or going into that experience of such emptiness and such loneliness. And here is a tip. This is what I call my $1 million idea, and feel free to use it. And you will notice many salespeople, many gurus, especially many people promoting some kind of spirituality will propose that they can help you get rid of this emptiness. They can help, they will sell you something. It could be an idea, it could be an actual, a book or a product or even a way of healing, a healing process that acknowledges that no matter how successful you are, no matter how happy you are, no matter what you have, the family, home, car, job, there's always something missing, right? There's just this, no matter how much you work and you get things together, there's always this something missing. Well, it's in that moment that they then market their service and market their wares and say, well, guess what? Now I have this great new product or this great new approach that you could be the better version of you, and we are going to help you get rid of that feeling of something is just empty. I propose to you that that is not going anywhere. That's not going to change. You're always going to be empty. However, what will change is your relationship to it, so that it will not frighten you, it will not freak you out, it will not make you chase people to be in relationship and grasp and cling and want to be with the wrong person just for fear of not being able to manage that emptiness. Now, before you even get to that place of being able to experiment with the kind of universal, neutral, existential emptiness, you have to look at your history of being ignored. You have to look at your history of being invisible in your family. You have to look at how did your family actually engage you? And did you have people who asked you, who wanted to drop down into your inner world, to know about your dreams and aspirations, your likes and dislikes, and join you in that place of inquisitiveness to reflect upon your feelings and what life means to you? If you did not have that, well, that's a loss. And that trained you to be in relationship with people who are very surface and people who do not have the skill and or want to drop into that deeper inner world experience. So the healing work for you, the healing invitation, is to grieve the history of what you didn't have, and then also begin to really come into knowing fully that for your relationships moving forward, that we need people, we need other people to reflect back to us and to engage and want to know who we are. Otherwise, if we don't, life will feel very two-dimensional and flat, and like you're just going through the motions, and that you have this kind of chronic emptiness that does not find any relief. I hope this video was helpful. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you want to watch other videos similar to this one. Also, there is a Facebook group called The New Love Addiction, and I will include the URL here. If you want to join the Facebook group and join some other like-minded people who love to talk about these sort of things, you can join that group. Please do. And then finally, if you'd like to know more information about me, you can find out at alanrobarge.com. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.